Hello everyone, I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 7 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains philosophical discourse, and thus may not be suitable for children.
Our show is listener-supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 7, Part 2. The old scars of ligature damage made his ankles and wrists resemble segmented tree trunks, each pinched with encircling his limbs to remind him of those times, of every shackle that had snapped shut, every chain that had held him down. In his dreams, the pain reared like a thing alive once more, weaving mesmerizing through a tumult of confused, distraught scenes. Hebrick, who had no hands and the shimmering near-solid tattoo, had, despite his blindness, seen clearly enough, seen those trailing ghosts, the wind-moaning train of deaths that stalked him day and night now, loud enough in Karsa's mind to drown out the voice of Uragul, close enough to obscure his god's stone visage behind veil after veil of mortal faces, each and every one twisted with the agony and fear that carved out the moment of dying. Yet the old man had not understood, not entirely. The children among those victims, children in terms of recently birthed, as the lowlanders use the word, had not all fallen to the bloodwood sword of Karsa Orlong. They were, one and all, the progeny that would never be, the bloodlines severed in the trophy-cluttered cavern of the Teblor's history. This was an interesting twist for me. When Karsa stood on the hill and saw all those ghosts approaching him in that vision that he had, I had assumed that he had taken the life of everyone that was there, in which case Karsa would have had to have been an absolute menace to kill that many people in his lifetime. Now that we know it was the bloodlines of all those people that he had killed, the unborn bloodlines, it makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah, I hadn't really picked up on that either. It seemed like a number of people that, by his own reckoning, I think, was not that many people. So yeah, that's a nice little addition to kind of clear that picture up. Also, to double down on what we said last week about these two not liking each other, that Hebrick can see this, his train of souls, but is basically blind to everything else. I could see how that would be a problem for Karsa. It's his little secret, and now it's revealed. Something like that. It makes me think of an interview I saw with a paranoid schizophrenic, and the interviewer was asking questions about the hallucinations that they saw. And this lady told him that she wouldn't talk about them because describing them made them seem real to her. And I wonder if there could be something similar going on here. It would be easier for Karsa to try and ignore what's following him around if there's nobody else to witness it and talk about it and bring it up.
I'm a little bit at a loss here of what could be causing this. Part of me does think that you're right. He's just trying to avoid it as best he can. But it sounds like it is there all the time. And so avoiding it is really challenging because he can't quiet it down, can't find other things to distract him.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me, too.
And also, maybe it's like PTSD for some soldiers, like grandpas, where the grandkids would be asking them about D-Day or something like that. The grandkids' parents would be like, don't talk to my dad about this because it'll really upset him.
Right.
They would rather try and block something so traumatizing. Maybe Karsa is having a little bit of that, where he just wants to avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's hard to imagine Karsa having PTSD.
It's true. Based on what we've seen, maybe as this mounts, as the numbers continue to grow and grow and grow, maybe it's reaching kind of critical mass for him.
Karsa thought Toblakai, a name of past glories, of a race of warriors who had stood alongside mortal Imass, alongside cold-meaned Jagut and demonic Forkrul Assail, a name by which Karsa Orlong was now known, as if he alone was the inheritor of elder dominators in a young, harsh world. Years ago, such a thought would have filled his chest with fierce, bloodthirsty pride. Now it racked him like a desert cough, weakened him deep in his bones. He saw what no one else saw, that his new name was a title of polished, blinding irony. The Teblor were long fallen from Thelum and Toblakai, mirrored reflections in flesh only, kneeling like fools before 7 blunt-featured faces carved into a cliffside, valley dwellers, where every horizon was almost within reach, victims of brutal ignorance, for which no one else could be blamed, entwined with deceit, for which Karsa Orlong would seek a final accounting. He and his people had been wronged, and the warrior who now strode between the dusty white boles of a long-dead orchard would, one day, give answer to that. But the enemy had so many faces. Even alone as he was now, he longed for solitude, but it was denied him. The rattle of chains was unceasing, the echoing cries of the slain endless. Even the mysterious but palpable power of Ruraku offered no surcease. Ruraku itself, not the whirlwind, for Toblakai knew that the whirlwind was like a child to the holy desert's ancient presence, and it touched him not. Ruraku had known many such storms, yet it weathered them as it did all things, with untethered skin of sand and the solid truth of stone. Ruraku was its own secret, the hidden bedrock that held the warrior in this place. From Ruraku, Karsa believed, he would find his own truth.
I wonder if there's another possibility for why he would stay. Not just because he can't do to the whirlwind or potential unfinished business with Silgar, but his search for more answers.
Yeah, it sounds like he wants to be here at this point.
Yeah.
And maybe part of it is just slowing down.
Yeah.
He's been going and going since he got to the New World. Maybe having a little bit of quiet and not constantly running from something and being in fight or flight mode gives him the ability to actually sit with his thoughts.
Quiet being subjective if he's being haunted by all these.
Yeah, agreed. No outside stimulus
Right.
necessarily. Yeah. Separately, on that point, always hearing these echoing cries and the rattling chains sounds like it would be maddening. It reminds me of people with really bad tinnitus, where it's so bad that I've heard of cases of people literally checking out because they couldn't handle it.
Yeah. I have seen a few ads. I don't know what they were selling, but these people with tinnitus and having that ringing stop, even momentarily, bringing tears to their face. It was such a relief to not be hearing that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I could see this as like a tenfold worse situation, maybe.
Karsa had knelt before Shaik Reborn all those months ago. The young woman with the Malazan accent who'd stumbled into view half carrying her tattooed, handless pet. Knelt, not in servitude, not from resurrected faith, but in relief. Relief that the waiting had ended, that he would be able to drag Leomin away from that place of failure and death. They had seen Shaik Elder murdered while under their protection, a defeat that had gnawed at Karsa. Yet he could not deceive himself into believing that the new Chosen One was anything but a hapless victim that the insane whirlwind goddess had simply plucked from the wilderness, a mortal tool that would be used with merciless brutality. That she had proved a willing participant in her own impending destruction was equally pathetic in Karsa's eyes. Clearly, the scarred young woman had her own reasons, and seemed eager for the power. He thought, "Lead us, war leader." The words laughed bitterly through his thoughts as he wandered through the grove, the city almost a league to the east, the place where he now found himself a remnant outskirt of some other town. War leaders needed such forces gathered around them, arrayed in desperate defense of self-delusion, of headlong single-mindedness. The Chosen One was more like Toblakai than she imagined, or rather, a younger Toblakai, a Teblor commanding slayers, an army of two with which to deliver mayhem. Shaik Elder had been something else entirely. She had lived long through her haunting, her visions of apocalypse that had tugged and jerked her bones ever onward as if they were string-tied sticks. And she had seen truths in Karsa's soul, had warned him of the horrors to come, not in specific terms, for like all seers she had been cursed with ambiguity, but sufficient to awaken within Karsa a certain watchfulness. Sounds like he went to a fortune teller. She read his palm.
Yeah.
The curse of ambiguity. You know? I foresee red in your future.
Yeah, right. Let me give you the most vague.
Over a blood-soaked horizon. You know, like just some random words, and you got to find the meaning yourself.
Yeah.
And it seemed he did little else these days but watch, as the madness that was the soul of the whirlwind goddess seeped out like poison in the blood to infect every leader among the rebellion. Rebellion. Oh, there was truth enough in that. But the enemy was not the Malazan Empire. Toblakai thought, it is sanity itself that they are rebelling against. Order, honorable conduct, rules of the common, as Leomin called them, even as his consciousness sank beneath the opaque fumes of Durhang. Yes, I would well understand his flight, were I to believe that he would present to us all the drifting layers of smoke in his pit, the sleepy look in his eyes, the slurred words. Ah, but Leomin, I have never witnessed you actually partake of the drug. Only its apparent aftermath, the evidence scattered all about, and the descent into sleep that seems perfectly timed whenever you wish to close a conversation, end a certain discourse. Like him, Karsa suspected, Leoman was biding his time.
I thought this was another interesting little tidbit, the possibility that Leoman is not actually taking Durhang and just putting on an elaborate act.
Next level manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea that he just pretends to pass out when he doesn't want to continue a conversation.
Try and work that into my own life.
Imagine that power.
Yeah. Really good.
Raraku waited with them, perhaps for them. The holy desert possessed a gift, yet it was one that few had ever recognized, much less accepted. A gift that would arrive unseen, unnoticed at first. A gift too old to find shape in words, too formless to grasp in the hands as one would a sword. Karsa, once a warrior of forest-cloaked mountains, had grown to love this desert. The endless tones of fire painted on stone and sand, the bitter needled plants and the countless creatures that crawled, slithered, or scampered, or slipped through the night air on silent wings. He loved the hungry ferocity of these creatures, their dancing as prey and predator, a perpetual cycle inscribed on the sand and beneath the rocks. And the sun and the desert in turn had reshaped Karsa, weathered his skin dark, stretched taut and lean his muscles, thinned his eyes to slits. Leoman had told him much of this place, secrets that only a true inhabitant would know. The ring of ruined cities, harbors one and all, the old beach ridges with their natural barrows running for league upon league, shells that had turned hard as stone and would sing low and mournful in the wind. Leoman had presented him with a gift of these, a vest of hide on which such shells had been affixed, armor that moaned in the endless, ever-dry winds. There were hidden springs in the wasteland, cairns and caves where an ancient sea god had been worshipped, remote basins that would, every few years, be stripped of sand to reveal long, high-prowed ships of petrified wood that was crowded with carvings, a long-dead fleet revealed beneath starlight only to be buried once more the following day. In other places, often behind the beach ridges, the forgotten mariners had placed cemeteries, using hollowed-out cedar trunks to hold their dead kin, all turned to stone now, claimed by the implacable power of Raraku.
This is more cool lore, that this whole desert may have been covered by water at some point, and every so often, things get uncovered.
I love it. It reminds me of the southwest United States, which was also covered by an inland sea a long time ago.
Yeah. And I guess this is more concrete evidence that these were what was the race, Kamraun?
It's the First Empire, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I was taking the ships and the canoes to be...
Oh, the Barghast?
The Barghast.
The way I think about it, if this was where that civilization existed, then maybe this is where that originated as they made their way to Genebakis. So from here, they had flight to Genebakis potentially.
Oh, so we're not even on the right continent for them.
Well, they had to start somewhere because if you remember, the Taist Edur were chasing them across the ocean. I don't know that the Taist Edur were native to this continent, but if the Barghast and the Toblakai combined fled across the ocean from somewhere, these ships do sound a lot like the ones that were under Kapustan that they unearthed, doesn't it?
That's what made me think of it when they were going through that and they were underneath the throne room or whatever and they were digging them out. That's what jumped to my mind. So maybe if you're saying they could have been First Empire, but they're just similar. It's not like the Barghast are the only ones making canoes and things.
What I'm saying is the Barghast came from the First Empire because that was because you had the Talanai Mass that were the true First Empire, right?
Okay.
Then you had this other civilization that's buried under the sand here. It's that same civilization that brought about the Soul Taken.
Okay.
And divers, whatever that ritual was that Culp and Hebrick and Felicin saw taking place, those calcified remains of people partially through transformation, like whatever was going on in that city. That civilization, if those are the same boats, they had to start here potentially, and then across the ocean they end up in Genebakis if they're running from the Taist Edur.
I
so
see.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Just a theory.
Right, good theory.
Layer upon countless layer, the secrets were unveiled by the winds. Sheer cliffs rising like ramps, in which the fossil skeletons of enormous creatures could be seen. The stumps of cleared forests, hinting of trees as large as any Karsa had known from his homeland. The columnar pilings of docks and piers, anchor stones, and the open cavities of tin mines, flint quarries, and arrow-straight raised roads. Trees that grew entirely underground. A mass of roots stretching out for leagues, from which the ironwood of Karsa's new sword had been carved, his blood sword having cracked long ago. As the resident bladed weapons expert, what do you think of him choosing to use ironwood to make his new sword instead of some type of modern steel?
I would think in his history, He's accustomed to wielding a wooden sword by using the bloodwood sword for so long. But I would say it's pretty smart. The thing you have to remember about ironwood is...
Please tell me.
I mean, ironwood is a very hard wood. I think it has some of the highest, I believe it's called a Janka rating, which is how they measure hardness of wood. And it's right up there with some of the hardest stuff on Earth. It's also one of the most dense woods. It doesn't float in water, which I think is an interesting kind of a little tidbit. And it's beautiful. It's got some excellent figuring. They use it on scales for, knives and things like that. I've myself purchased some. But if they're also in the desert, I don't know how much access to metals and things that they have, unless he's going to harvest from other weapons that are around.
Well, Aran steel is supposed to be very notable for its quality.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of them referring to weapons as good Aran steel. That being said, they're not in Aran. They don't have control of Aran. But you would think that the techniques and the materials that they're gathering there are available on this subcontinent.
Yeah. It could just be part of his history, though. He's used to wielding wooden weapons, bloodwood sword, ironwood. It just kind of seems like a natural transition from him to go that route.
One component of this that confused me a little bit was he doesn't have access to the blood oil anymore. And part of the bloodwood sword was the edge was basically almost like an epoxy layer that had been built up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was unsure of how he was accomplishing something similar with this ironwood sword.
I wondered the same thing because it did sound like it had those healing properties. Some sort of investment, maybe not necessarily magical, but certainly through that oil. But I guess we'll see how it holds up. It sounds like a good wood on paper. It sounds like a good choice.
Okay. I think we're going to add a new title for you as well.
Oh.
So not only bladed weapons expert, but also wood expert.
All right. I'll accept that moniker.
Raraku had known Apocalypse firsthand, millennia past, and Karsa wondered if it truly welcomed its return. Shaik's goddess stalked the desert, her mindless rage the shriek of unceasing wind along its borders. But Karsa wondered at the whirlwind's manifestation. Just whose was it? Cold, disconnected rage, or a savage, unbridled argument? Did the goddess war with the desert, whilst far to the south, in this treacherous land, the Malazan army prepared to march? As he approached the heart of the grove, where a low altar of flat stones occupied a small clearing, he saw a slight, long-haired figure seated on the altar as if it was no more than a bench in an abandoned garden. A book was in her lap, its cracked skin cover familiar to Karsa's eyes. Without turning round, she spoke. "I have seen your tracks in this place, Toblakai," Karsa said, "and I yours, chosen one." As he walked into view around the altar to stand facing her, she said, "I come here to wonder." Karsa thought, "As do I." She asked, "Can you guess what it is I wonder about?" He replied, "No." The almost faded pocks of bloodfly scars only showed themselves when she smiled. She said, "The gift of the goddess offers only destruction." He glanced away, studied the nearby trees. He rumbled, "This grove will resist in the way of Raraku. It is stone, and stone holds fast." Her smile fading away, Shaik muttered, "For a while, but there remains that within me that urges creation." Karsa said, "Have a baby." Her laugh was almost a yelp as she said, "Oh, you hulking fool, Toblakai. I should welcome your company more often." Karsa thought, "Then why do you choose not to?" Shaik waved a small hand at the book in her lap, then said, "Drajna was an author who, to be gracious, lived with malnourished talent. There are naught but bones in this tome, I am afraid. Obsessed with the taking of life, the annihilation of order. Yet not once does he offer anything in its stead. There is no rebirth among the ashes of his vision, and that saddens me. Does it sadden you, Toblakai?" He stared down at her for a long moment, then said, "Come." Shrugging, she set the book down on the altar and rose, straightening the plain, worn, colorless talaba that hung loose over her curved body. He led her into the rows of bone-white trees. She followed in silence. 30 paces, then another small clearing. This one ringed tight in thick, petrified boles. A squat rectangular mason's chest sat in the skeletal shade cast down by the branches, which had remained intact down to the very twigs. Karsa stepped to one side, studied her face as she stared in silence at his works in progress. Before them, the trunks of 2 of the trees ringing the clearing had been reshaped beneath chisel and pick. 2 warriors stared out with sightless eyes, one slightly shorter than Karsa, but far more robust, the other taller and thinner. He saw that her breath had quickened, a slight flush on her cheeks. Without pulling her eyes from their study, she murmured, "You have talent. Rough, but driven. Do you intend to ring this entire clearing with such formidable warriors?" Karsa replied, "No. The others will be different." Her head turned at a sound. She quickly stepped closer to Karsa and said, "A snake." He nodded, then said, "There will be more coming from all sides. The clearing will be filled with snakes, should we choose to remain here." Shaik said, "Flare necks." Karsa said, "And others. They won't bite or spit, however. They never do. They come to watch."
This might be a little bit of a jump, a stretch, if you will. But I can't help but wonder at the symbolism of the snakes in this grove. In the main area of the city in Raraku, we have what I think represents common views of snakes, representing death or a warning. I get that feeling when we're dealing with the mages and the commanders of Sheikh's army, especially. The other side of this could be a transformation, wisdom, or rebirth that we see in the other half of the symbolism from snakes. As Shaik talks about Drajna only wanting destruction, while she thinks about creation, whatever that might be, Karsa's on his own journey. He's getting away from killing immediately as his answer for everything and starting to look for truth. And snakes in the grove are here, it seems, to kind of witness that. I'm not sure, but I'm enjoying this kind of the duality of this idea. Snakes representing danger in one area and watching in another. I don't know if it's deliberate or if that's just me going out on a limb, but it does make me wonder on some of the things that we're seeing in this chapter so far.
I'm going to go ahead and put this disclaimer out there. This is an area that I'm historically weak at, trying to find symbolism in something like this. And to be honest with you, I never really put much thought into the overarching symbolism that could be happening here, because I do think it's really cool that these snakes show up. And there has been a ton of symbolism in the chapter thus far regarding snakes.
Mm-hmm.
The pit that Leomin has cleared out where the snakes used to live, but then he is the snake now.
Right.
And then you have the vipers that are Shaik's commanders.
Mm-hmm.
And then the snakes here. I agree. A lot of symbolism with snakes in this chapter. As to their context, I have difficulty with that, especially here.
This is something that's coming on this second read through. And the first time through, I was just reading. I didn't put anything to it. But just thinking about it a little bit more, I'm just kind of wondering, throwing it out there, my own curiosity sort of. And like I said, I don't know if that's intended or not, but it just kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
He doesn't really do anything without some type of plan.
That's true. Yeah.
I suspect there probably is something else going on here. Maybe it'll come about later. For me, at least, I'll have to keep it in my mind and look for clues as to what this could be showing.
Mm-hmm.
Some power has to be guiding all these snakes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the spirit of the desert or something.
Right. Because it does make you wonder if he says they never bite, they never do anything. So they're obviously not threatened in this grove. Like he says, they're just hanging out. They just watch.
So that's an interesting thought. He's talking about how he likes the desert and he wants to find answers here. Maybe this is a manifestation of his relationship with the desert.
Maybe. Yeah. There seems to be something within him that he does have, like not necessarily mage-like powers that he can exert, but there is something about him, sort of a lodestone that draws things to him in some way. I don't know.
Yeah. I have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Like you said, keep looking for clues as we go through, as things start to get maybe a little bit more clear.
Shaik shot him a searching glance, then shivered slightly. She asked, "What power manifests here? It is not the whirlwinds." Karsa replied, "No, nor do I have a name for it. Perhaps the holy desert itself." I'm over here positing things. It says it himself. Literally the next sentence. Kamraun.
Did you even read the book?
Oh! This is one of those areas, just jumping back, I hated English class, hated English class. And part of it was these heady talks about, oh, Lord of the Flies, so-and-so standing on the rock. What does it mean that he's standing on this rock saying this? It's like, I don't care. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I go on a tirade about snakes.
My wife's making fun of me. She's like, you know how you talk about hating English class? Your podcast is literally analyzing the text. And I'm like, no, it's not. I feel like I'm treading dangerously close to that area, but I guess I just have to care about the book enough to try to parse it this way. I don't know. I've always disliked the way it was presented in English class. Maybe that's the issue.
That very well could be just the way it's presented. And you're in a different place in high school mentally. I think most of us, we're just trying to survive, just get through it. I could not wait for PE or weightlifting class or anything where I wasn't nose in a book. So
man, I loved physics and math. I was all about that.
Okay.
My whole goal was I need to test out of English for any type of post high school education that I have, which I did. I was like, screw this. I never want another ounce of this. And then I make a podcast doing this kind of stuff. I always liked reading. So
Nerd.
Maybe I had to come about it my own way, I guess.
Nerd.
Had to reinvent
Nerd.
the wheel, as it were.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I had a conversation with one of my friends at work about this, and we were talking about things that you find interest in now versus when you were younger. And, if somebody had told me when I was in high school you would enjoy reading autobiographies or business books or reading a book about accounting or something like that, I would have said, you're out of your mind. There's no way. But now I find it quite interesting. So changes over time, I guess.
It's amazing how we all just follow the same patterns. We all turn into our parents, or you see people go through the cycle of life. Oh, grandpa's looking at his investments. It is
right.
You're 20, you don't have any investments, and then you start getting into your 30s and 40s and you're like, okay, you've hit a point where maybe you've done that, hopefully,
Yeah.
and then you need to watch it. It's just funny, man.
Yep.
The cycle of life. Shaik slowly shook her head to that, then said, I think you are wrong. The power, I believe, is yours. So, to your point, is Karsa manifesting this through something?
There we go. Neither of us read ahead a couple of sentences.
He shrugged and said, we shall see when I have done them all. Shaik asked, how many? He replied, besides Bairoth and Delam Thord, 7. She frowned and asked, one for each of the holy protectors? Karsa thought, no. Then said, perhaps, I have not decided. These 2 you see, they were my friends, now dead. He paused, then added, I had but 2 friends.
I'm liking that he finally calls them his friends, although it seems to be a little bit late. Maybe if he'd thought of them as his friends before they went on their raid to Silver Lake, there would have been more consideration in the outcome. And I think he's doing a lot more introspective thinking. We saw that in one of his last conversations with Torvald when he was talking about some of the regrets he has. And speaking of Torvald, I'm a little surprised he doesn't list Torvald as among his friends.
Agreed. That was my first thought. Torvald was a true friend.
Yeah.
Maybe the first one that he ever acknowledged in his life.
It's what it feels like. He did say it in one of their last encounters together.
Yeah. I also mirror your sentiments regarding Karsa's growth in referring to Bairoth and Delam as his friends. It's sad that sometimes we don't see things clearly until it's too late.
Yeah, true.
Shaik seemed to flinch slightly at that and asked, what of Leomin? What of Mathok? What of me? Karsa said, I have no plans on carving your likenesses here. Shaik said, that is not what I meant. He thought, I know. Then he gestured at the 2 Tebler warriors and said, creation, chosen one. Shaik said, when I was young, I wrote poetry, in the path that my mother already walked. Did you know that? He smiled at the word young, but in all seriousness he replied, no, I did not. Shaik said, I have resurrected the habit. Karsa said, may it serve you well. She must have sensed something of the blood-slick edge underlying his statement, for her expression tightened. She said, but that is never its purpose, is it? To serve, or to yield satisfaction, self-satisfaction, I mean, since the other kind but follows as a returning ripple in a well. Karsa said, confusing the pattern. Shaik said, as you say, it is far too easy to see you as a knot-browed barbarian, Toblakai. No, the drive to create is something other, isn't it? Have you an answer? He shrugged and said, if one exists, it will only be found in the search, and searching is at creation's heart, chosen one. Shaik stared at the statues once more. She asked, and what are you searching for with these old friends? Karsa said, I do not know, yet. Shaik said, perhaps they will tell you one day. The snakes surrounded them by the hundreds now, slithering unremarked by either over their feet, around their ankles, heads lifting again and again to flick tongues towards the carved trunks. Shaik murmured, thank you, Toblakai. I am humbled and revived. Karsa said, there is trouble in your city, chosen one. She nodded and said, I know. He asked, are you the calm at its heart? A bitter smile twisted her lips as she turned away. She asked, will these serpents permit us to leave? He replied, of course, but do not step. Instead, shuffle, slowly. They will open for you a path. She edged back on their path as she said, I should be alarmed by all this. Karsa thought, but it is the least of your worries, chosen one. Then he said, I will keep you apprised of developments if you wish. Shaik said, thank you, yes. He watched her make her way out of the clearing. There were vows wrapped tight around Karsa's soul, slowly constricting. Sometime soon, something would break. He knew not which, but if Leomin had taught him one thing, it was patience. When she was gone, the warrior swung about and approached the mason's chest. Dust on the hands, a ghostly patina, tinted faintly pink by the raging red storm encircling the world.
To touch on this again, the importance of Karsa's character development, this patience. He was learning it when he was imprisoned with the Malazans. He was learning it with Torvald. And now, again, with Leomin, It sounds like it's really kind of starting to sink in.
Yeah, and it's a good sign.
Yeah, I agree. Another detail that I've overlooked was the whirlwind itself, what it looks like. The ghostly patina, red and pinks. I always thought just because they're in the desert that it would be kind of sand and earth tones. But this description, there's a lot of red in the storm encircling it. Far more ominous look, in my opinion.
I can see that. Sun filtered through the sand could look red, depending on where the sun is in the sky.
You know, I had not even considered the angle of the sun, sunsets and things like that. I assumed that it was the magics of it.
Always red? It depends on the color of the soil. If it's like in Utah, for example, that's a very reddish sand, so it could filter through that way. So it's probably a combination of those, you know?
Okay.
I wanted to touch on these vows that are constricting his soul. And I wonder if he is really planning on sticking to all of these vows, because there were some real bangers in there. Looking back, he made some vows to Urgal and the Seven to slay 1,000 children. Upon departing his village, Karsa internally vows to Urgal, I, Karsa Orlong, shall slay for you 1,000 children, 1,000 souls to lay at your feet. He vowed to deliver trophies. In a flashback to the glade of the faces in the rock, Karsa swears to Urgal that he will deliver a feast of trophies such as never before blackened the soil, enough perhaps to free his god from the stone itself.
Jesus.
He vowed to free the Sunid. Upon seeing the broken spirits of the enslaved Sunid tribe in the slave pit, Karsa vows before the Seven that he shall snap those chains of the Sunid. And he has some other vows of conquest and vengeance. After deliberately letting a Rathid youth escape to warn his village, Karsa vows on the blood of the youth's kin that one day the Rathid war leader shall kneel before me. We haven't seen that yet. He vows to unite the Teblor. He tells Delam Thor that he is not content to simply be the Urid champion, declaring one day all the Teblor shall kneel before me.
Jeez, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're getting up there. Yeah. Upon seeing the embarrassment and humor in the face of the Forkroll Assail, Calm, after she is freed, he vows to Urgal that he will make the ones who imprisoned her regret their deed, specifically naming the Talani Mass as his enemy.
Gonna be a tough one.
Yeah. While being pursued by the Malazans, Karsa swears before Urgal regarding Silgar and Damask, neither will see the dawn. He made some other vows to Na. He takes Na into that stall in the town. He prays to Urgal, and then he vows upon the blood of the children that he slew that day that he and the dog would meet again. I don't know if Na even survived that whole encounter. How did his hip heal? How did the villagers not find him? I don't know if we find that out in the Witness trilogy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Karsa vows to the Sunid in the slave pits, Ganel. Karsa tells him, I shall come once more and I shall remember you. He's going to come back for Ganel. He vows to Torvald Nam, I, Karsa Orlong of the Urid, give my word to free Torvald when he escapes. He did that, so this is one that he's held true.
You can check that one off the list.
Yeah. He further vows that he will not kill Torvald once he has freed him unless given cause, and they cleared up those causes. And then also he has this vow of silence with Hebrick. So extensive list of vows, some of which are way up there.
Yeah.
And to your point, how many of these is he taking seriously? Is he harboring some potential anxiety around his ability to actually fulfill them, like leading the Teblor, freeing the Sunid, all of that stuff?
Right. I mean, he was a rash young Teblor, and that seemed to be his way. He would just make these wild statements kind of out of pocket. It was just what he was feeling, so he said it. But it does make you wonder how much he's going to hold some of these. He has checked off some of these on his list already. But yeah, you're right. Some of these big ones, especially something like naming the Talani Mass as a whole as his enemy. That's going to be, I don't know about that one, my friend.
Well, lucky for him, a lot of them are gone. That kind of solved itself a little bit at the end of
Memories of Ice.
Memories of Ice, yeah.
Yeah. They got the second gathering.
Yeah. They're not technically gone, but they're not what they once were. So maybe it'll be easier for him now.
I don't know, man. Some of these that we seem to be pretty formidable. One more thing. If we're going into... You had made the power levels when we were going through the Segala.
Mm-hmm.
Rake got to number 7. Where do you think Karsa would fall in that Segala ranking system?
I can't say too much. Where did I put the Segula? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Because I honestly don't remember what I rated everything. Dude, that's a deep pull.
We're going to have to remember that one.
The tier list?
We might have to go into the tier list, actually create one here.
I think it changes depending on the season.
It could.
Because you got patch notes.
Little hot fixes here and there.
Yeah, depending on the current patch, somebody may move up a little bit or down a little bit, you know?
Oh, that's funny.
The heat of the day was but an illusion in Raraku. With the descent of darkness, the desert's dead bones quickly cast off the sun's shimmering, fevered breath. The wind grew chill and the sands erupted with crawling, buzzing life, like vermin emerging from a corpse. Risen flitted in a frenzied wild hunt through the clouds of cape moths and chigger fleas above the tent city sprawled in the ruins. In the distance, desert wolves howled as if hunted by ghosts. Hebrick lived in a modest tent raised around a ring of stones that had once provided the foundation for a granary. His abode was situated well away from the settlement's center, surrounded by the yurts of one of Mathok's desert tribes. Old rugs covered the floor. Off to one side, a small table of piled bricks held a brazier sufficient for cooking, if not warmth. A cask of well water stood nearby, flavored with amber wine. A half-dozen flickering oil lamps suffused the interior with yellow light. He sat alone, the pungent aroma of the henbara tea sweet in the cooling air. Outside, the sounds of the settling tribe offered a comforting background, close enough and chaotic enough to keep scattered and random his thoughts. Only later, when sleep claimed all those around him, would the relentless assault begin. The vertiginous visions of a face in jade, so massive it challenged comprehension. Power both alien and earthly, as if born of a natural force never meant to be altered. Yet altered it had been, shaped, cursed sentient. A giant buried in Odotarl, held motionless in an eternal prison, who could now touch the world beyond, with the ghosts of two human hands. Hands that had been claimed, then abandoned by a god. Hebrick thought, but was it Fainor who abandoned me, or did I abandon Fainor? Which of us, I wonder, is more exposed? This camp, this war, this desert, all had conspired to ease the shame of his hiding. Yet one day, Hebrick knew, he would have to return to the dreaded wasteland from his past, to the island where the stone giant waited. Return, then he wondered, but to what end? He had always believed that Fainor had taken his severed hands into keeping, to await the harsh justice that was the tusked one's right. A fate that Hebrick had accepted as best he could. But it seemed there was to be no end to the betrayals a single once priest could commit against his god. Fainor had been dragged from his realm, left abandoned and trapped on this world. Hebrick's severed hands had found a new master, a master possessed of such immense power that it could war with Odotarl itself. Yet it did not belong. The giant of jade, Hebrick now believed, was an intruder, sent here from another realm for some hidden purpose. And instead of completing that purpose, someone had imprisoned it. One thing I do want to touch on here is this concept that Hebrick is evaluating himself and saying, how many times could a once priest betray his god? If I remember correctly, Hebrick was wrongly persecuted and put through this because he was supposed to be the next Destriant. And there was some political shenanigans afoot, and they wrongly put him through this process. Hebrick's punishment was manipulated by agents of the Empire, likely the Claw. The primary motivation was political rather than religious. Hebrick, serving as a historian, had written a treatise claiming that Empress Lysine had failed in her assassination of Emperor Kellanved and Dancer, and that the pair had instead ascended. He was wronged. He was put through this, not because he wronged his god, but he was punished for political reasons that had nothing to do with Fainor.
It's interesting why he would even blame himself or have that thought in his mind. I wonder what would cause him to feel that way, unless he is completely retconning his own memories or something like that. I don't know why he would do that.
People handle things differently. Some people blame it all on themselves. Some people blame the world for everything that is their own fault. I do wonder if he's taking on too much here, because he was allegedly in line to be the next Destriant of Fainor. And if you think about that, that is a very close relationship with Fainor. The only time I see maybe he might have turned against Fainor was after it happened. Maybe why wasn't he protected by Fainor?
That's true. Why did my god abandon me? That kind of a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Separately, when Fainor was pulled down, he wasn't the one that actually did it.
Right. Hebrick touched the stone, and then Bodden took his stump and pressed it to the tattoo on Hebrick's chest, and that's what caused him to pull down.
Yeah. Again, that wasn't Hebrick doing it himself. So
Right.
I'm really wondering at Hebrick turning all this inward and blaming himself.
I don't understand. I mean, an overdeveloped sense of guilt or something like that, maybe.
Yeah. Hebrick sipped at his tea, praying that its narcotic would prove sufficient to deaden the sleep to come. It was losing its potency, or, rather, he was becoming inured to its effects. The face of stone beckoned. The face that was trying to speak. There was a scratching at the tent flap, then it was pulled aside. Felicin Younger entered. She said, still awake. Good, that will make this easier. My mother wants you. Hebrick asked, Now? Felicin Younger replied, "Yes. There have been events in the world beyond, consequences to be discussed. Mother seeks your wisdom." Hebert cast a mournful glance at the clay cup of steaming tea in his invisible hands. It was little more than flavored water when cold. He said, "I am uninterested in events in the world beyond. If she seeks wise words from me, she will be disappointed." An amused glint in her eyes, Felicin Younger said, "So I argued. Shaik insists." She helped him don a cloak, then led him outside, one of her hands light as a cape moth on his back. The night was bitter cold, tasting of settling dust. They set out along the twisting alleyways between the yurts, walking in silence. They passed the raised dais where Shaik Reborn had first addressed the mob, then through the crumbled gate posts leading to the huge, multi-chambered tent that was the Chosen One's palace. There were no guards as such, for the goddess's presence was palpable, a pressure in the chill air. There was little warmth in the first room beyond the tent flap, but with each successive curtain that they parted and stepped through, the temperature rose. The palace was a maze of such insulating chambers, most of them empty of furniture, offering little in the way of distinguishing one from another. An assassin who proceeded this far, somehow avoiding the attention of the goddess, would quickly get lost. The approach to where Shaik resided followed its own tortuous, winding route. Her chambers were not central, not at the heart of the palace, as one might expect. With his poor vision and the endless turns and twists, Hebert was quickly confused. He had never determined the precise location of their destination. He was reminded of the escape from the mines, the arduous journey to the island's west coast. It had been Bodden in the lead. Bodden, whose sense of direction had proved unerring, almost uncanny. Without him, Hebert and Felicin would have died. Hebert thought, a Talon no less. Ah, Tavora, you were not wrong to place your faith in him. It was Felicin who would not cooperate. You should have anticipated that. Well, sister, you should have anticipated a lot of things, but not this. They entered the square, low-ceilinged expanse that the Chosen One, Felicin Elder, child of the House of Perrin, had called her throne room. And indeed there was a dais, once the pedestal for a hearth, on which was a tall-backed chair of sun-bleached wood and padding. In councils such as these, Shaik invariably positioned herself in that makeshift throne, nor would she leave it while her advisors were present, not even to peruse the yellowed maps that the commanders were wont to lay out on the hide-covered floor. Apart from Felicin Younger, the Chosen One was the smallest person there. Hebert wondered if Shaik Elder had suffered similar insecurities. He doubted it. The room was crowded. Among the army's leaders and Shaik's select, only Leoman and Toblakai were absent. There were no other chairs, although cushions and pillows rested against the base of 3 of the 4 tent walls, and it was on these that the commanders sat. Felicin Younger at his side, Hebert made his way to the far side, Shaik's left, and took his place a few short paces from the dais, the young girl settling down beside him. Some permanent sorcery illuminated the chamber, the light somehow warming the air as well. Everyone else was in their allotted place, Hebert noted. Though they were little more than blurs in his eyes, he knew them all well enough. Against the wall opposite the throne sat the half-blood Nappin, Corbolo Dom, shaved hairless, his dusky blue skin latticed in scars. You would think shaving in this world would come about with its own dangers, given if you nick yourself, you could get infected.
Yeah.
I guess if they have access to Denul, not a big deal. But I just think it's funny when I think of people shaving their heads in the olden days. You know, you nick yourself, you could die.
Yeah. You read a lot of texts like that, right? All those, I think the Oregon Trail and stuff like that seem like minor injuries, and all of a sudden, yeah, something's turned septic and you're losing a limb, and then that turns into a real big problem later.
Yeah, and if the infection's on your head, it's dangerously close to your brain already.
Yeah, yeah. Those things travel quickly, don't they?
Yes. On Corbolodom's right, the high mage Camist Rello, gaunt to the point of skeletal, his gray hair cut short to stubble, a tight-curled iron beard reaching up to prominent cheekbones, above which glittered sunken eyes. On Corbolo's left sat Henneris, a witch from some desert tribe that had, for unknown reasons, banished her. Sorcery kept her youthful in appearance, the heavy languor in her dark eyes the product of diluted tralb, a poison drawn from a local snake, which she imbibed to inure her against assassination. Beside her was Fael, an obese, perpetually nervous woman of whom Hebert knew little. This concept of female sorcerers using sorcery to make themselves look younger is an interesting one psychologically. There are a couple other cases that come to mind here. Number one, you got the Red Witch from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
She was also doing something similar. And then the kids were watching Naruto, and there is a lady in there that uses some type of ninjutsu to make herself look younger.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
A vanity, I think. in many ways. And the power that they have over men. Men are simple creatures, you know? If they don't have some type of discipline around this stuff, they're easily manipulated. So I think that could be a contributing factor.
That's what jumped to my mind, is that it's probably easier to get somebody to listen to you if you are a more attractive woman than if she is, whoever. Let's say she's an
old swamp hag, for example.
Yeah, Meg from Legend.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, who knows for sure.
Along the wall opposite Hebrick were Lorik, Bidithal, and Febril, the latter shapeless beneath an oversized silk talaba, its hood opened wide like the neck of a desert snake, tiny black eyes glittering out from its shadow. Beneath those eyes gleamed twin fangs of gold, capping his upper canines. They were said to hold emulor, a poison rendered from a certain cactus that gifted not death, but permanent dementia. So he bites someone and they get dementia? Am I taking that correctly?
That's what it sounds like. Why would you be doing that? I'm going to give you dementia and then...
It's a cool image, though.
It is.
The hood open like a snake. You can't see his face. It's very reminiscent of the imagery in 300, where sometimes it would be dark imagery, but only some parts of it were showing. I'm thinking of early in the movie when the Persian emissary is giving the gold to those elders at the oracle. Do you remember that part of it?
Yeah.
And it darkens and his teeth are glowing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the dominant features there. I think this would be a really cool image to show of the gold canines glowing and the eyes, but nothing else in the hood.
Be very cool looking. I mean, again, Erikson writes very cinematically. Mm-hmm. This is another one of those proof positive that that's still going on. Love it.
The last commander present was on Felissen's left, Mathok, beloved of the desert tribes. The tall, black-skinned warrior possessed an inherent nobility, but it was the kind that seemed to irritate everyone around him, barring perhaps Leoman, who appeared to be indifferent to the war chief's grating personality. There was, in fact, little to give cause to the dislike, for Mathok was ever courteous, even congenial, quick to smile. Hebrick thought, perhaps too quick at that, as if the man dismissed everyone as not worth taking seriously, with the exception of the chosen one, of course. As Hebrick settled, Shaik murmured, "Are you with us this evening, Ghost Hands?" Hebrick replied, "Well enough." An undercurrent of tense excitement was in her voice as she said, "You had better be, old man. There have been startling developments. Distant catastrophes have rocked the Malazan Empire." Hebrick asked, "How long ago?" Shaik frowned at the odd question, but Hebrick did not elaborate. She replied, "Less than a week. The Warrens have been shaken, one and all, as if by an earthquake. Sympathizers of the rebellion remain in Dujek One-Arm's army, delivering to us the details." She gestured to Lorik, then continued, "I have no wish to talk all night. Elaborate on the events, Lorik, for the benefit of Corbolo, Hebrick, and whoever else knows nothing of all that has occurred." Lorik tilted his head. He said, "Delighted to, Chosen One. Those of you who employ Warrens will no doubt have felt the repercussions, the brutal reshaping of the Pantheon. But what specifically happened? The first answer simply is usurpation. Fainur, Boar of Summer, has, to all intents and purposes, been ousted as the preeminent god of war. In his place, the once first hero, Treach, the Tiger of Summer. Lorik was merciful enough to not glance at Hebrick. Hebrick thought, ousted. The fault is mine and mine alone. Shaik's eyes were shining, fixed on Hebrick. The secrets they shared taut between them, crackling yet unseen by anyone else.
Do you think that that's calculated mercy? Meaning Lorik doesn't look at him on purpose? Or Lorik doesn't look at him because there's no way he would know about what Hebrick did, so he's just feeling like it was merciful?
I think it was out of mercy for Hebrick. He wouldn't want to call attention to the known ex-priest of Fainur here, because you presumably had a pretty close relationship with your god at one point, and that's a complicated set of emotions. I have a really good impression of Lorik. I don't know why he has such a bad reputation, because everything we've seen so far indicates that he's enigmatic, but he's not outwardly despicable like Bidithal or openly plotting against Shaik like Febril.
Okay. I was just curious because, Shaik was looking at Hebrick here as Felissen. She obviously knows, but she wouldn't want to tell anybody about that, like their history. I'm curious if her backstory would cause problems.
Oh, I suspect it would look bad to everybody here if they found out that those two contributed to Fainur getting ripped into this realm.
Yeah.
Even if, technically speaking, it was Bodden that put the stump into the tattoo. They were both there, and it wouldn't have happened if Heberick didn't have the relationship with Fainur to begin with, and him touching the jade hand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity around that scenario.
Yeah, I guess best to keep those cards close to your vest, as they say.
Yeah. Lorik would have continued, but Corbolodom interrupted the High Mage. He said, "And what is the significance of that to us? War needs no gods, only mortal contestants, two enemies and whatever reasons they invent in order to justify killing each other." He paused, smiling at Lorik, then shrugged and continued, "All of which satisfies me well enough." His words had pulled Shaik's gaze from Heberick. An eyebrow rising, she addressed the Nappin. "And what are your reasons specifically, Corbolodom?" Corbolodom replied, "I like killing people. It is the one thing I am very good at." Heberick asked him, "Would that be people in general, or perhaps you meant the enemies of the apocalypse?" Corbolodom replied, "As you say, Ghost Hands." There was a moment of general unease, then Lorik cleared his throat and said, "The usurpation, Corbolodom, is the one detail that a number of mages present may already know. I would lead us gently towards the less well-known developments on faraway Genebacus. Now, to continue. The Pantheon was shaken yet again by the sudden, unexpected taking of the Beast Throne by Tog and Fandere, the mated elder wolves that seemed eternally cursed to never find each other, riven apart as they were by the fall of the crippled god. The full effect of this reawakening of the ancient hold of the beast is yet to be realized. All I would suggest, personally, is to those soul-taken and divers among us, where the new occupants of the Beast Throne. They may well come to you, eventually, to demand that you kneel before them." He smiled, then went on, "Alas, all those poor fools who followed the path of the hand, the game was won far, far away."
So I don't know if this is maybe a little point to remind us just a little bit, but Heberick touching that jade statue, that ancient power linked to chaos, was part of breaking the seal of his stumps and pulling Fenner into the mortal realm. And when Fenner got pulled out, it created a kind of vacuum in the Pantheon, and it allowed Trake to ascend to the new god of war. And later, it allowed Tog and Fandere to reclaim their places in the Beast Hold as the original masters of that realm.
Yes, thank you for that. And then we should also remind everybody that Moby, the familiar of Crocus's uncle Mammoth, ended up winning the Path of Hands competition.
Yeah, right.
Whatever season of the competition that was. Because I'm sure it happened before at some point. Might have been season 15 for all we know,
Yeah.
you know? Still on air. I thought there was an interesting statement from Lorik in here. All of the soul-taken and divers among us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know of any at this point. So
Right.
I'm curious who is a soul-taken or divers in that room.
And I'm also impressed with the level of information that he has. And it seems like some people don't know all of the happenings that are going on, the full history of this. Maybe they can detect a disturbance in the force, as it were. But the fact that he has all these pieces is pretty impressive.
So he has his spies, which that's an intelligence network that's very helpful. I don't know of these other people, how localized their spies are to Seven Cities or otherwise. And then separately, the other ones are kind of shady.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're holding all of this information to themselves and using it as a coin to benefit themselves.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that could be.
Which is another feather in the cap of Lorik from the perspective, like, he seems like a pretty decent guy, comparatively speaking.
Right.
Fael murmured, "We were the victims of deception, by minions of Shadowthrone no less, for which there will one day be a reckoning." Bidithel smiled at her words, but said nothing. Lorik's shrug affected indifference. He said, "As to that, Fael, my tale is far from done. Allow me, if you will, to shift to mundane, though if anything even more important, events. A very disturbing alliance had been forged on Genebacus to deal with a mysterious threat called the Panyan Daemon. One Arm's host established an accord with Caladan Brood and Animander Rake. Supplied by the supremely wealthy city of Darujistan, the joined armies marched off to wage war against the Daemon. We were, truth be told, relieved by this event from a short-term perspective, though we recognized that in the long term such an alliance was potentially catastrophic to the cause of the rebellion here in Seven Cities. Peace on Genebacus would, after all, free Dujek and his army, leaving us with the potential nightmare of Tavora approaching from the south and Dujek and his 10,000 disembarking at Erlatan, then marching down from the north." Corbolodom growled, "An unpleasant thought. Tavora alone will not cause us much difficulty. But the High Fist and his 10,000, that's another matter. Granted, most of his soldiers are from Seven Cities, but I would not cast knuckles on the hope that they would switch sides. Dujek owns them, body and soul." Shaik, her voice strangely flat, said, "Barring a few spies." Lorik said, "None of whom would have contacted us had things turned out differently." Felicin Younger cut in, "A moment, please. I thought that One Arm and his host had been outlawed by the Empress." Lorik explained, thus permitting him to forge the alliance with Brood and Rake, a convenient and temporary ploy, lass. Horbolodam said, we don't want Dujek on our shores. Bridge burners, Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, Kalam, Black Maranth, and their damn munitions. Lorik murmured, permit me to ease your pattering heart, Commander. We shall not see Dujek, not any time soon at any rate. The Panyan War proved devastating. The 10,000 lost close to 7,000 of their number. The Black Maranth were similarly mauled. Oh, they won in the end, but at such a cost. The bridge burners, gone. Whiskey Jack, dead. Heberick slowly straightened. The room was suddenly cold. Lorik went on, and Dujek himself, a broken man. Is this news pleasing enough? There is this. The scourge that is the Talani mass is no more. They have departed, one and all. No more will their terrors be visited upon the innocent citizens of 7 cities. Thus, what has the Empress left? Adjunct Tavora, an extraordinary year for the Empire. Coltane in the 7th, the Aryan Legion, Whiskey Jack, the Bridge Burners, One Arm's host. We will be hard-pressed to best that. Horbolodam laughed, both hands closed into pale-knuckled fists as he said, but we shall. Whiskey Jack, dead. Ah, blessings to Hood this night. I shall make sacrifice before his altar. And Dujek, oh, his spirit will have been broken indeed. Crushed! Sickened, Hebert growled, enough gloating. Camus Rello was leaning far forward. He hissed, Lorik, what of Quick Ben? Lorik replied, he lives, alas. Kalam did not accompany the army. No one knows where he has gone. There were but a handful of survivors from the bridge burners, and Dujek disbanded them and had them listed as casualties. Camus demanded, who lived? Lorik frowned and replied, a handful, as I said. Is it important? Camus shouted, yes! Lorik glanced over at Shaik and said, very well. Chosen One, do you permit me to make contact once more with my servant in that distant army? It will be but a few moments. She shrugged and said, proceed. Then, as Lorik lowered his head, she slowly leaned back in her chair. Shaik said, thus, our enemy has faced irreparable defeat. The Empress and her dear empire reel from the final gush of lifeblood. It falls to us, then, to deliver the killing blow. That's a good point, actually. When you tally up all of these losses that have happened in such a short period of time, it's not looking good for the Malazan Empire.
It's true. As Lorik is reading through it right there, it definitely feels a lot worse. You're reading through Memories of Ice, and it's kind of happening gradually. You see each of these losses, these big catastrophic battles that are happening, and, they're kind of getting dwindled down. It seems more incremental. When you just read it as a list like that, it does make your eyes go wide, and you're like, oh my God, yeah, there's really not much left to him, is there?
No. I just thought of an interesting real-life analogy to losing the bridge burners. Operation Red Wings with the Navy SEALs. Mm-hmm. So in Afghanistan, they had a bunch of Navy SEALs in one helicopter, and it got shot down by an RPG. That was catastrophic to their morale, but also to the military, because that was years and years of experience and training, all lost in 1 second. And then they had another helicopter crash a couple years later, I believe, because it was Red Wings and then the other one, right?
I don't remember what the second one was, but Red Wings, I think, was when they were rescuing Marcus Luttrell.
There was another one later where they had 2 Blackhawks and one of them got shot down, similarly by an RPG. And that was, again, another super loss. So I think they adjusted their tactics of how they transported people after that so that they weren't all concentrated so tightly.
Yeah.
But if you think about the bridge burners in that similar context, they were the equivalent force for the Malazan Empire. And so the morale hit that you would have from losing them like that, terrible.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Heberick suspected he was the only one present who heard the hollowness of her words. Heberick thought, Sister Tavora stands alone now, and alone is what she prefers. Alone is the state in which she thrives. Ah, lass, you would pretend to excitement at this news, yet it has achieved the very opposite for you, hasn't it? Your fear of Sister Tavora has only deepened, freezing you in place. Lorik began speaking without raising his head. He said, Blend, Toes, Mallet, Spindle, Sergeant Anstey, Lieutenant Picker, Captain Perrin. There was a thump from the high-backed chair as Shaik's head snapped back. All color had left her face, the only detail Heberick could detect with his poor eyes, but he knew the shock that would be written on those features. A shock that rippled through him as well, though it was but the shock of recognition, not of what it portended for this young woman seated on this throne. Unmindful, Lorik continued, Quickben has been made High Mage. It is believed the surviving bridge burners departed by warrant to Darujistan, though my spy is in fact uncertain of that. Whiskey Jack and the fallen bridge burners were interred in Moonspawn, which has, gods below, abandoned. The Son of Darkness has abandoned Moonspawn. He seemed to shiver then and slowly looked up, blinking rapidly. A deep breath loosed raggedly. He said, Whiskey Jack was killed by one of Brood's commanders. Betrayal, it seemed, plagued the alliance. Corbolo Dom sneered and said, Of course it did. Camus Rello, his hands wringing together incessantly on his lap, said, We must consider Quick Ben. Will Taystran send him to Tavora? What of the remaining 3,000 of One-Arm's host? Even if Dujek does not lead them, Lorik said, they are broken in spirit, hence the wavering souls among them who sought me out. Inadvertently glancing over his shoulder, then starting at his own shadow on the wall, Camus hissed, And where is Kalam Mikar? He's jumping at shadows already.
I love it.
Could be in this tent right now. Corbolo Dom snarled, Kalam Makar is nothing without Quick Ben, even less now that his beloved Whiskey Jack is dead. Camus rounded on his companion, asking, And what if Quick Ben is reunited with that damned assassin? What then? Corbolo Dom shrugged and said, We didn't kill Whiskey Jack. Their minds will be filled with vengeance for the slayer among Brood's entourage. Do not fear what will never come to pass, old friend.
This is a great section. These commanders and mages really seem to have been worried about the Malazan forces. Dujek, Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, and especially, like you point out, Camus looking over his shoulder for Kalam. I'm getting like an Ann Landers vibe here. These Malazans are living rent-free in their heads.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, to be fair, they should be scared because they know what Kalam and Quick Ben are capable of. At any moment, this could be over.
Yep. I think it's funny also how they're underestimating. Corbolo's like, they're nothing. And it's like, I think that these are still quite formidable people.
Yeah, we're picking up a little bit on his arrogance.
Yeah.
He thinks he's so cool. We'll see how cool you are.
He's got a lot of hubris, this one. With a little Zoolander. You think you're too cool for school. I've got a news flash for you. You aren't.
Shaik's voice rang startlingly through the room. She shouted, Everyone out but Heberick, now! Blank looks, then the others rose. Felicien Younger hesitated and asked, Mother? Shaik said, You as well, child, out. Lorik said, There is the matter of the new house and all it signifies. Chosen. Shaik cut in, Tomorrow night! We will resume the discussion then. Out! A short while later, Heberick sat alone with Shaik. She stared down at him in silence for some time, then rose suddenly and stepped down from the dais. She fell to her knees in front of Heberick, sufficiently close for him to focus on her face. It was wet with tears. She sobbed, My brother lives! And suddenly she was in his arms, face pressing against his shoulders as shudders heaved through her small, fragile frame. Stunned, Heberick remained silent. She wept for a long, long time, and he held her tight, unmoving, as solid as he could manage. And each time the vision of his fallen god rose before his mind's eye, he ruthlessly drove it back down. The child in his arms, for child she was, once more, cried in nothing other than the throes of salvation. She was no longer alone with only her hated sister to taint the family's blood. For the need his presence answered, his own grief would wait.
I'm wondering what Felicien is feeling here. If we go back to Gardens of the Moon, her feelings towards her brother were more affectionate. I think she was even happy to see him when he came back home at one point. She wanted him around. In Deadhouse Gates, she started to hate and resent him, blaming him for the family's ruin and her own journey into the Ototaro mines. Could it be both feelings at the same time, having this emotional reaction because of whatever inner turmoil, inner conflict she's got going on?
I think she is now almost exclusively focusing her hatred on Tavora, leaving room for her to feel some fondness for her beloved brother and relief that he had not died in Darujistan. She probably assumed he had died among the 7,000 other troops that they lost there.
Yeah.
Or maybe even before that. Through that whole campaign, it was unknown. Hadn't heard for years what had happened to him. He kind of just disappeared.
Okay.
Separately, going back to why she keeps Heberick around, he's the only one she can act this way in front of. It gives her the ability to be the young girl that she is underneath this facade.
That's true. She probably does need some outlet like that. It's probably not easy for people to act this hard and cold and unfeeling all the time, especially when that's not actually who she is.
Yeah, and being so young.
Yeah.
Really hard to be mature enough to lock everything down.
Yeah.
That also may be part of why she's acting differently now. You're right, in Deadhouse Gate, she was harboring a lot of resentment towards Perrin because of the situation she was in, but maybe in retrospect, she's gone through enough in life to know now that sometimes you're put in situations that you really don't have a lot of control over, and you do the best you can with the hand that you're dealt. So maybe there's a little bit of that maturity coming through as well, in that she realizing maybe it wasn't just cut and dry that Perrin did what he did. Like maybe he was forced into a certain avenue.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting, these characters, and I'm thinking of Apsalar in the same way. Young girl, young person. She's been possessed by the whirlwind goddess. She still has her own memories, but then she also has the stuff from the whirlwind goddess. Apsalar, possessed by Cotillion, still has her own memories, but has a lot of these memories from Cotillion as well. It seems like there's got to be a lot of inner turmoil going on in characters like that, where you have your own memories and somebody else's who's far more long-lived and is also an ascendant.
Yeah, that'd be really jarring, I think.
Yeah.
All right, and thus the chapter ends. For standout moments, finding out that Karsa's chain of souls is comprised of those that made up of the unborn bloodlines of his victims. That was an interesting detail.
Yeah, that was really cool. I had not considered that at all, and I guess it wasn't plain until they said it right there in the beginning of this section.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the conversation between Shaik and Karsa. One of the first real conversations between two characters in this camp of degeneracy. It didn't feel hostile or loaded, and kind of a nice break from all the conversations that were going on in last week's episode.
Yeah, it was interesting the stuff Karsa was not saying, and he was just blunt about not considering her a friend and everything, keeping that distance there. Yeah. Karsa's an interesting guy.
He is.
He does seem like one of the few people that Shaik may be able to open up to, similar to Hebrik.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why that is.
Because he knows the truth of her coming out of nowhere and accepting that mantle. He was there when she became Shaik, and he knows it was a matter of expedience, not any type of destiny.
Right. But it does make you wonder why, knowing that he is still open to her and not thinking you're just a complete fraud and dismissing her entirely.
Probably sympathizes with her.
Okay.
Think of the stuff he's been through. It's in a way a little bit, would you say it's a little bit similar?
Maybe it is.
Because he's got this stuff going on with Urgal. He understands what it's like to be being driven towards something.
Yeah. Used by a greater power and all that. Yeah.
And whether you're choosing to accept that and go along with it or not.
Okay. I can see that. I also liked how Karsa was carving out the statues for his friends, Byroth and Delim. Kind of a touching memorial. And I feel like that's just cementing some of those changes we were seeing earlier with him regards to feeling remorseful.
I like it as well, and I never would have guessed that Karsa would have a creative outlet like this.
Yeah, we've never seen him carving anything other than weapons.
Yeah, it's like you go to therapy and they're like, you should do some art. You should paint.
Yeah. While I generally dislike Shaik's commanders, I do really like how bothered they were by the bridge burners and company, and I hope that the excitement of the decimation of the Malazan forces turns to ashes in their mouth.
Yeah, I love the panic of not knowing where Kalam and Quick Ben are. That, is so telling.
It's so good, too. Yeah, I loved it.
All right, great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, nothing springs to mind right now, but enjoying these nods to history that's going on. You get these little info dumps, from Lorik and some of the stuff from Hebrik and Karsa. It's just nice to help flesh out the story.
Okay. I would like to point out that I had no crash outs about Shaik or Volisan Elder, as it were. So maybe there's been some personal growth on Kamraun's journey as well.
It's good.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.